It all started with a jacket in the rain. Harris, a weary cab driver just trying to finish his shift, spots a woman stranded on a soaked street with no umbrella and desperation in her eyes. He hands her his jacket, an act of kindness he doesn't think twice about. But by sunrise, his city is in chaos. A private jet has landed smack in the middle of downtown, and no one knows how or why it got there. The insignia on the jet, same as the one on his jacket, dragged into a whirlwind of secrecy, shadow operatives, and high-stakes whistleblowing, Harris finds himself face to face with Elena, a woman whose charm masks a dangerous mission. She's not just on the run, she's taking on a global syndicate, and Harris's one simple gesture gave her the cover she needed. Now he's deeper than he ever imagined. What began as an ordinary ride turns into a race against time, corruption, and betrayal. This is a story about the ripple effects of kindness, the cost of truth, and the jacket that changed everything. Buckle up. The meter's running, and the destination is far from ordinary. Rain draped the city like a curtain of silver threads, thick and relentless. Neon lights smeared themselves across puddles on the asphalt, making the streets look like an abstract painting, bright, chaotic, and cold. Inside his dented yellow cab, Harris Clay, 50-something and road-worn, tapped the steering wheel with calloused fingers. The heater whined faintly. The dashboard glowed dimly. Frank Sinatra crooned from the radio, nearly drowned by the rhythmic clatter of rain on metal. Harris sighed. It was almost midnight and he was ready to call it. He'd driven 12 hours, made just enough to scrape by. He missed warmth, missed silence, missed the comfort of things not being broken. But before he could turn the cab toward home, a shape on the corner caught his eye. A woman. Not just any woman alone, soaked to the bone, standing beneath a flickering street lamp like she'd been conjured from the storm itself. No umbrella, no coat. One hand clutched a small black bag to her chest. The other waved hesitantly at his cab. He hesitated, not out of cruelty, just instinct. Late-night solo fares sometimes spelled trouble, but then she looked at him, eyes wide, not pleading, not demanding, just tired, like she'd been running, maybe not just physically. He pulled over. She opened the door but didn't get in immediately. "You're not off duty, are you?" Harris shook his head. "Not yet." She slid in trembling, the scent of rain and tension clinging to her like perfume. Her clothes were soaked, her dark hair plastered to her face. Her lips moved, but no destination came out. "Anywhere in particular?" he asked. She looked ahead. "Just drive, please." Harris glanced at the rearview mirror, trying to read her expression, but her gaze was distant, focused on something far outside the cab. Without pressing, he shifted the gear and eased into traffic, the rain swallowing the sound of his tires. A few blocks in, he noticed her shivering. He reached into the passenger seat and grabbed his old leather jacket, cracked at the seams, faint scent of tobacco and coffee embedded in its lining. "Here," he offered, holding it out behind him. She blinked, startled. "I can't take it," he said. "You're soaked. I'll survive." She hesitated, then reached for it. Their fingers brushed for a second. Hers were ice cold. She pulled the jacket tight around her shoulders, exhaling softly. "Thank you. Don't mention it." They drove in silence, the kind of silence that isn't awkward, just necessary. Outside, the rain had no intention of letting up. Inside, time felt suspended. After a while, she leaned forward. "How long have you been driving?" "Long enough to forget what I was doing before," Harris answered. She nodded like she understood. "Bad night?" he asked. The worst, she said, with a small, haunted smile, but maybe turning. He raised an eyebrow. Glad to be the turn. Her expression softened, and for the first time she looked human, vulnerable, grateful. They reached a quiet industrial block near the edge of the city. Most would think it deserted, but she pointed toward a chain-link gate with a security light overhead. There, Harris squinted. Beyond the fence was a private hangar. You sure? I'm sure. She opened the door, but before stepping out, she paused and looked back. Keep the jacket. You sure? He asked. That's real leather. I'll make sure it finds its way back. She gave him one last glance, a mix of apology and thanks, and slipped into the rain. Harris watched her walk to the gate, buzz herself in, and vanish behind metal and fog. A moment later, a distant low whine of turbine engines stirred the night. And then, nothing. No name, no number, just the jacket missing, just the rain falling. The silence in the cab lingered like a ghost. Harris turned the dial down on the radio and let the hum of tires against wet pavement fill the void. The rain showed no sign of letting up, hammering the windows like impatient fingers. The woman, still clutching the jacket, leaned back in the seat, eyes staring blankly out the window. Every so often, Harris glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She wasn't crying, but there was something fractured in her stillness. Her breaths came shallow and measured, like she was trying not to fall apart. He cleared his throat. You from around here? She didn't answer immediately. Was, she said finally. Long time ago. He nodded as if he understood. He didn't, not really, but he'd learned not to pry. People told their stories on their own time, or never. You look like you've been running, he added casually. Because I have, she said without flinching. They stopped at a red light. Harris looked over his shoulder. Her eyes were dark, rimmed with exhaustion, but unyielding. From someone, he asked. From everything. She smiled bitterly, pulled the jacket tighter. It was far too big on her, but she wore it like armor. I'm sorry, she murmured, about dragging you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere, Harris replied. I drive. It's what I do. The light turned green and they moved on. The city had quieted, its streets mostly abandoned, save for the odd delivery van or night owl. They passed under an overpass where water dripped from the beams above like a second rain. You don't ask many questions, she said after a while. I used to, he said. Didn't like the answers. She gave a soft laugh, and for a moment, the weight on her seemed to lift. Harris didn't know why he felt this need to keep her talking. Maybe it was the way her voice trembled when she spoke. Maybe it was the way she gripped his jacket like it was the only solid thing left in her world. Can I ask your name? He said gently. She hesitated. Elena. He smiled. Pretty name. She didn't return it. Yours? Harris. The cab rolled on, moving further from the lights of downtown. The buildings grew fewer, the night darker. Almost there, she whispered. Where is there exactly? You'll see. Harris frowned. He wasn't in the habit of driving into the unknown, but something about Elena, her poise, her quiet desperation, kept him from turning around. He had the growing sense that this was more than just a fare, that this was the beginning of something he couldn't walk away from. The cab came to a stop in front of a security gate. Beyond it, a hangar loomed in the fog, tall, silent, anonymous. No logos, no markings, just cold steel under halogen lights. Elena leaned forward, gaze steady. You can wait here, I won't be long. Are you sure this place is safe? Harris asked, peering through the windshield. For me, safer than most. She reached for the door handle but paused. I meant it, Harris, about the jacket. It matters. It's just a coat. It's more than that. She stepped out into the rain, jacket still draped around her shoulders. She didn't run, but she moved with intent, like she was walking the final stretch of a long journey. Harris watched as she buzzed the intercom at the gate. A soft beep answered and the gate slid open slowly. She disappeared into the dark. Harris waited, not sure why. Maybe curiosity, maybe I'm concerned, maybe something else entirely. Minutes passed. The hangar doors opened, flooding the lot with harsh white light. A sleek private jet, low profile and matte black, taxied forward under its own power. It moved with a silent grace that didn't match the setting. Harris sat up straighter. You've got to be kidding me. The jet turned toward the runway adjacent to the hangar and began accelerating. Within seconds, its wheels lifted off the ground, slicing through the mist and disappearing into the night sky. She was gone. No more words. No thank you. No payment. Just gone. He looked at the back seat. Her damp imprint still marked the leather. The faint scent of lavender and city rain lingered. That was it. She hadn't even taken the jacket. The morning broke with gray skies and a city soaked in yesterday's sorrow. Harris dragged himself out of bed and flipped on the small TV balanced on his kitchenette counter. The news anchor looked flustered, hair frizzing from damp air and stress. An extraordinary sight early this morning. A private jet found parked on Fifth Avenue, just outside the Chambers Financial Building. Authorities say the aircraft was landed manually with no crash damage, no crew on board, and no registered flight path. Harris froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. The screen switched to aerial footage. There it was, the same sleek black jet, sitting in the middle of the city like a piece of modern sculpture. Calm, defiant, inexplicable. He narrowed his eyes. On the tail of the jet, almost camouflaged into the bodywork, was a faint insignia, a curled E etched like a monogram, the same one sewn into the lining of the jacket Elena had worn. He turned toward the chair where he'd thrown the coat the night before. His heart skipped. He grabbed it and examined the inside. There it was, a subtle black patch, barely visible, but there, E, wrapped in silver thread. His pulse quickened. This wasn't a coincidence. The news anchor continued. City officials are baffled. FAA records show no flight plan. Surveillance caught no approach. Some speculate a drone or military test, others a stunt, but authorities have yet to comment. Harris turned off the TV. He didn't believe in stunts or accidents, and Elena had made a promise. I'll make sure it finds its way back to you. But what exactly was it? The jacket, the truth, or something much, much bigger? Harris paced the narrow confines of his apartment, jacket clenched in his hands like it might whisper a secret if he just held it long enough. The E embroidered inside burned into his mind, matching the insignia on the jet now blocking half of downtown. That couldn't be a coincidence. He opened his closet, pulled out a shoebox of old receipts and contacts, odds and ends from years of cab work. He hadn't used this stuff in ages. Among the scraps was a stack of cards, some outdated fare logs, and a city map scribbled with notes from back when GPS wasn't something you took for granted. Elena, he whispered, setting the jacket down on the table. Who are you? Curiosity soon turned to obsession. He scoured the internet for private jets matching that shape and insignia. Nothing, no aviation registry listed it. No black market forums mentioned it. It was a ghost. He even called a pilot friend, retired now, who'd worked out of JFK. You saying someone landed a private jet on Fifth Avenue and you saw it happen? The man chuckled. Didn't see it land, Harris replied. Saw it take off from a hangar I didn't even know existed. Well, if it landed clean, someone wanted it to be seen. You don't pull off a stunt like that to keep things quiet. That stuck with Harris. It wasn't just mystery. It was message. That night, restless, he returned to the corner where he first picked Elena up. The rain had stopped, but the street still smelled like damp concrete and tension. He walked the block, checking nearby shops for security cameras. A corner deli had one pointed right at the street lamp where she'd stood. Inside, the shopkeeper was reluctant but softened once Harris bought 2 overpriced sandwiches and a carton of milk. You want footage from when? The man asked. 2 nights ago, midnight. He loaded the footage and fast-forwarded. There, Elena, soaked, pacing, glancing back the way she came like she expected to be followed. The cab pulling up, her climbing in. Then something caught Harris's eye, a dark sedan idling across the street. It didn't move when she entered the cab. It didn't follow. It just waited. Whoever was in that car, they weren't surprised. They were watching. Harris left with the footage on a flash drive and a gut full of questions. Back home, he unzipped the jacket again. A small tear in the lining caught his attention. Nothing big. Just enough to reveal a folded edge of something hidden beneath the stitch. He dug in carefully and pulled out a card, water-stained and faintly crumpled. It read, "Thank you, E." And below that, in even smaller type, "If you're reading this, come find me. You'll know how." The next day, Harris drove his cab as usual, but his mind wasn't on the fares. Every idle moment, he kept checking the side mirrors. That same dark sedan, or one like it, seemed to turn up more than once. A few cars behind, across the intersection, parked where it didn't belong. It was subtle but obvious to someone like Harris, who made a living watching patterns. Around sunset, he pulled into his usual gas station. As he stepped out to fill up, a voice piped up behind him. You're either really brave, or really slow. He turned sharply. A young man in a hooded jacket leaned against the trunk of his cab. Wiry, sharp-eyed, barely out of his 20s, but already carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. You're Harris, the man said. Who's asking? She sent me, Elena. Harris froze. She said if you found the card, you'd be ready. I don't even know what I'm in yet, Harris muttered at. Good, the man said, grinning. That means you're not corrupted. They got in the cab, Harris reluctantly behind the wheel. The kid introduced himself as Kip, hacker, info runner, chaos specialist. At least that's what he called himself. Why me? Harris asked as they sped through city traffic. Because Elena trusts very few people, and because that jacket was more than just warmth, it was her backup escape plan. She used me. She chose you, Kip corrected. Big difference. Kip explained that Elena had been gathering evidence against who he wouldn't say yet, but that her plan had required multiple layers of diversion. The jet, a smokescreen, the hangar exit, a misdirection. And Harris, the unassuming accomplice, a man no one would suspect. Everything hinges on you not being anyone, Kip said, and that makes you powerful. Harris parked the cab on the outskirts of Brooklyn, outside what looked like a shuttered upholstery warehouse. Faded signage, barred windows, and ivy-choked walls gave no clue of what lay inside. Follow me, Kip said, tapping a code into a hidden panel near a service door. They entered. The interior was the polar opposite of the exterior. bright screens, humming servers, security monitors displaying city grids, facial recognition matches, and drones in standby mode. It was a war room. At the center of it all stood Elena, dry now, calm, wearing tactical black and steel resolve. "You came," she said, voice unreadable. "You didn't leave me much choice," Harris replied, tossing the jacket onto a chair. "No," she said softly. "I left you an opportunity." Kip drifted off into the shadows, leaving them alone. Elena gestured for Harris to sit. "What's all this?" he asked. "A revolution," she said. "Quiet, surgical, necessary." She explained it all, how she'd uncovered a private intelligence network embedded in corporate infrastructure, how they manipulated stock markets, elections, and wars under the guise of economic forecasting, and how one person going public wouldn't be enough. It needed evidence delivered to the right hands at the right moment. "And the jet?" Harris asked. "Noise," she said, "to draw eyes while we move the truth." "So what do you need me for now?" "To finish the delivery." She looked at him then, not like a stranger, but like a partner, and in that moment Harris realized he'd already crossed the line. Elena stood in front of a digital board, the light from the screens casting sharp lines across her face. Behind her, Kip tapped away at a console, bringing up maps, profiles, news streams. Harris could barely keep up. "This is bigger than I thought," Harris said, eyeing a screen showing a rotating 3D model of a data center. Elena nodded. "That's because you only saw the storm, not the thunder behind it." She gestured toward a satellite image zooming into a corporate complex outside Manhattan. Chimera Analytics, on paper a forecasting firm. In reality, they manipulate global trade routes, elections, war zones. Through information leaks and algorithmic nudging, their AI models can trigger market crashes with a few keystrokes. "And you have proof." "I have more than proof," Elena said. "I have keys." She tossed a small, encrypted drive onto the table. "They call it the casket. It contains raw data dumps, whistleblower files, internal memos, everything we need to shut Chimera down." "So why not just go to the press?" Harris asked. Kip chimed in. "The press is compromised. Elena already tried. The story got buried. Editors vanished. One reporter died in a staged car crash." Harris felt the weight of it settle into his chest. "And you want me to deliver that?" "We want you to finish what we can't," Elena said. "Your cab has no trace, no electronic signature, no association to any activist group. You're invisible in all the right ways." Harris leaned back. He was just a cab driver, no training, no connections. But then again, he wasn't just anyone, and Elena had trusted him. "Where am I going?" he asked. "There's a contact at the Beacon, an independent journal too small to be bought. You'll drive across the city, no GPS, no mobile phone, and drop off the drive." "Simple as that?" "Nothing is ever simple," Kip said, "but it's our best shot." Elena stepped closer. "You once said driving is what you do. Now you're driving the truth." Harris took the drive, slipping it into a hidden compartment beneath his cab's passenger seat. He nodded once. "Let's make some noise." The streets were quieter than usual, too quiet. As Harris pulled away from the safe house, headlights flicked on in a parked SUV a block behind. It followed with precision, never too close, never too far. "Eyes are on me already," he muttered. At a red light, the SUV paused too. Silent confirmation. He turned on the old AM radio and began scanning for interference. Static on multiple bands, jamming signals. Someone was watching everything. 10 blocks in, He pulled into an alley and popped the trunk. From a hidden box behind the spare tire, he retrieved an old burner phone and dialed a number Elena had given him. "Ready," he said. The voice that answered was not Elena's. It was calm, British, and commanding. "Drive to Pier 46. Leave the cab. A boat will meet you." I thought this was a delivery mission. It still is, but they're moving faster than we thought. If you keep driving, they'll catch you. If you hide it, they'll kill you. We need to get it out. Now. Harris hesitated. Then he turned back onto the main road, made 3 quick turns, and ditched the tail in a parking structure near Midtown. As he approached the pier, a black van blocked the street. 3 men stepped out, earpieces in, hands hovering near concealed weapons. "You Harris Clay?" one asked. "Nope, just another tired cabbie," he replied. The man stepped closer. "That jacket says otherwise." Harris smiled. "I got more than a jacket in this cab." And he floored it. Tires screeched. The van gave chase. Bullets ripped through the rear window. Harris ducked, fish-tailed onto the wharf, and saw the small motorboat waiting. He parked just long enough to grab the jacket and the drive. Then he ran. The motorboat bobbed violently in the waves, but Harris leapt aboard, crouching low as it peeled away from the dock. The driver, a quiet man with a shaved head and military posture, didn't speak. They cut across the river, the wind and water stinging like needles. Behind them sirens wailed, too late. The city's lights grew smaller as they veered toward an industrial port on the far side. The man finally spoke. "You've got the casket?" Harris nodded, pulling the drive from his jacket and handing it over. The man slipped it into a waterproof pouch, sealed it inside a titanium box, and passed it to a woman standing at the edge of the dock ahead. She disappeared into a warehouse. "She's uploading it to an isolated satellite relay," the man explained. "From there, the data will flood into 6 independent whistleblower outlets in Europe and South America. Within an hour, the world will know what Chimera really is." "And Elena?" Harris asked. "She has her own route out, if she survives." Those words hit like a punch. He turned toward the skyline. Sirens echoed. Traffic backed up where the jet still sat, like a monument to defiance. Then the news hit. First, a trickle. Encrypted blogs, subreddits lighting up. Then major headlines. Underground corporation linked to global disruption. Black box of economic espionage cracked. Truth leaked through taxi-driven dead drop. And there, tucked into the footer of the first wave of leaks, this delivery was made possible by an anonymous civilian cab driver. Harris smiled faintly, eyes scanning the city he thought he knew. Sometimes it only takes one ride to change the route. The truth was out, but freedom had a cost. The moment the first leak hit international news outlets, the city's undercurrent erupted. Chimera operatives scrambled. Emergency meetings convened in boardrooms. Phones rang behind closed doors in government buildings. Somewhere in the sky, legal teams began descending like vultures. But Harris? He was still running. After the handoff, the dock was no longer safe. He jumped back into his cab, now riddled with bullet holes and likely tagged by surveillance, and drove with urgency. A voice buzzed in his earpiece. "Elena's extraction point is compromised," Kip said. "They're coming hard." "Where is she?" "Industrial district near Red Hook. She's alone." Harris didn't hesitate. Rain returned as he tore through the city, the downpour masking him from drones and cameras. By the time he reached the warehouse, the sky was a violent gray, and the wind howled like warning sirens. He burst through the door. Elena stood in the center, clutching a small duffel, her gun lowered at the sight of him, her breath caught. "You came! They're closing in." "I know." Harris didn't ask for permission. He grabbed her hand and ran. Outside, a black SUV turned the corner. Headlights blazed. Harris shoved Elena into the cab and peeled off. Tires screaming across soaked pavement, bullets chased them. A side mirror shattered, a rear window exploded. But Harris drove like the city itself obeyed him. He ducked alleys only locals knew, blew through construction zones, and braked just enough to send one of the pursuing cars skidding into a barricade. "Pier 9, Elena shouted. "Boat waiting, if they're still there." They careened through traffic, horns blaring, pedestrians diving for cover, and then clear water. The pier appeared like salvation through fog. Harris swerved to a stop. Elena threw open the door, looked back at him one last time. "You've done enough. I'll do more." She kissed his cheek, then printed onto the boat. Gunfire lit up the dock as she vanished into the storm. The next morning, the city woke up changed. The jet on Fifth Avenue was gone, airlifted quietly overnight by unmarked helicopters. News outlets scrambled to verify the truth behind the leaks. Anonymous sources fed the fire, and whistleblowers crawled out of the shadows. There were arrests, executives, officials, agents. But Elena? Gone. Vanished like she had never existed. Kip reached out to Harris briefly, voice tight over a secure line. "She made it out. That's all I can say." "Where?" "No one knows. That's the point." And just like that, he too disappeared. Harris was left with a cab full of holes and a head full of questions. He replaced the broken windows, patched the bullet holes with duct tape, and got back on the road. He drove regular fares again. Tourists, commuters, drunk couples on date night. But something had shifted in him. Every so often, he'd reach for the glove box and pull out the jacket. She had left it behind, again, neatly folded. Inside the pocket, a fresh note. "You saved more than just me. E." The cab became quieter, his routes slower, but every once in a while someone would ask him if he'd heard of the jet story, the one about the whistleblower who escaped through a cab driver's kindness. He'd smile faintly. "Sounds like a movie," he'd say. Rain returned, as it always did. On the same corner where Harris first saw her, another woman stood, not Elena, just a young girl, maybe 20, soaked to the bone, arms hugging herself, looking lost in the world. Harris pulled over, leaned across the passenger seat. "You all right?" She blinked at him, startled, then nodded. "No coat?" he asked. She shook her head. Without a word, Harris reached behind the seat and held out the jacket. It was old now, softer at the seams, but warm. "It's clean," he said with a wink. She laughed, light, nervous. "Thank you." They drove in silence for a while. She watched the city pass by, nose nearly to the window. "You always drive this late?" she asked. "Sometimes." "Is it safe?" "Not always, but it's honest." She looked over, studying him. "You seem like someone who's seen a lot." "Maybe." "Ever picked up anyone important?" Harris grinned, eyes flicking to the rear view. "All my passengers are important." Later, she stepped out, thanked him again, and disappeared into the night. He sat there a moment, engine running, hands resting on the wheel. The rain beat steadily on the roof. He looked at the jacket folded on the seat beside him. Still warm, still traveling. And somewhere far away, a jet carved through the sky, silent, untraceable, free.